Therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy sh moment? Okay, real therapist here. I got one. Some of my clients are shockingly bad at giving themselves credit. Holy sh, like they might get a nearly straight A GPA in a brutal major while battling depression. Or overcome years of phobia and get behind the wheel again. Or write a literal novel. Or raise a kid as a single parent with low income. Or build new relationships after being burned. Or cope with OCD well enough to hold down a job. And they'll talk about themselves as if everyone on earth is better than them. As if their accomplishments are worthless. And I know it's because of depression or anxiety or another condition. But I'm often stunned by how differently I see them compared to how they see themselves. I work in mental health and have worked in acute and crisis settings for the majority of my career. The most notable event I experienced was when a young person had presented with significant ongoing suicidal ideation who was dealing with a lot of I spent a lot of time with them, mostly de-escalation and working out what the plan should be moving forward. One of their parents came in a little while later and I had the opportunity to speak to them about where their child was and what had been going on, with their consent of course. Midway through me trying to explain some of the psychological constructs and ways the parent could help, they said to me, "Is this going to take much longer? I have a show to go and watch." All I can say is, I never judge my patients. I have never walked their path or viewed the world through their eyes, but the people around them who perpetuate the suffering of the people I work with through ignorance, malice and selfishness, I judge them. During my training I was asked how would you feel if a client were to come to you and admitted they were a pedophile that was on the edge of committing seriously horrific acts? Could you see that person as another human being that needed help? Or were your personal feelings about the abhorrent behavior too strong? This factor leads some people to not continue my course onto the next level, but it really illustrates the level of non-judgment needed in this field. We all have our own personal feelings, of course, but these get talked about in supervision. When I was underage, I got caught with a drink on Bourbon Street and got a minor in possession. I was telling my therapist about it, and said that the police caught me with a hand grenade in New Orleans. He didn't realize that a hand grenade was a type of drink, and it was funny to watch him try to process that his patient might have just casually told him that he had been caught with a fragmentation grenade. He took a big long pause, and said, "Where did you even find a grenade?" I realized the misunderstanding quickly and corrected him, but for a moment he definitely was thinking, holy sh, how do I deal with this? I'm a licensed psychologist and I'll tell you I've never judged my patients. The world is so full of judgment and it's my job to objectively look at someone who's suffering and offer them empathy and a path towards healing. The one thing I've judged is the situations that people survive and continue to live their lives. I've worked with torture survivors, survivors of genocide and famine. I've worked with people whose entire villages were wiped out because a warlord wanted the water well that was sitting in the town. It always gives me pause in terms of the anguish some people face and their resilience. So if I have one message, it would be in the words of R.J. Palacio, be kind for everyone is fighting a hard battle. Not a judgment, you kind of train your brain not to judge, because you are seeking to understand and help. When you do those things, you can't simultaneously judge. We could all use a little more of that in real life, I suppose. I'll share this though. I do feel concerned about this recent phenomenon of young people I worked with self-diagnosing, sharing, and identifying very closely with mental illness, as if the pendulum quickly swung from never, ever share your feelings to OMG, you're depressed? All of us are too. Life's challenges can be tough and they don't need a scientific sounding label to be valid and real. You are not your diagnosis. We can find validation and support in healthier ways. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she cancelled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. Clinical psychologist working primarily in forensics here. This means my clients are usually involved in legal proceedings, family court, juvenile court, criminal court, etc. My job is usually to evaluate or provide treatment. I'm not there to judge. That's the judge's job. But of course I have my thoughts. I am usually impressed by the justifications people make for shy behavior. The one that irks me the most is when parents manipulate their child against the other parent. I've had to do therapy for a 5-year-old who said she doesn't want to see a parent because they haven't paid child support. Excuse me, what 5-year-old knows, understand, or needs to be worried about child support? I was once in my psychiatrist's office AB monthly, 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on more as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders, aunt and 2 uncles, I was guardian conservator for, had died one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack, my daughter attempted suicide, and my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with a therapist in the office next to her and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so effed up. I had no idea. I think she saved my life. Can I answer from the other side? I had something close to a mental breakdown after a painful breakup. Started seeing a therapist. It was going more or less well. At one point I had a sort of revelation about all my bullshit, about my own responsibility in the whole mess. So next session I'm actually thrilled to share this with the therapist, about how I finally see a bunch of my own problems in the way I interact with women, and which caused a relationship that wasn't really healthy from the get-go. I'm halfway through trying to explain this and the therapist goes, "Oh, you know, women are weird." So that was that. I never went back. F that guy. I feel like a lot of the comments saying that they never judge their clients might be working in voluntary services, or they've been very fortunate in their client base. Judgment isn't an inherently bad thing. It's how we know that murdering people is wrong. So when a convicted pedophile client told me, "Nothing gets me going like a pair of little girls' worn panties," you better believe I judged the F out of him. I continued to work with him and I treated him with compassion and respect because he's a human being worthy of both. I did my job because I'm a professional, but I can't honestly say that I didn't judge him. I judged that he should never be around children. I judged that he is not yet ready for change. I judged that his access to his own daughter should be closely supervised. That's a lot of judgments. Understanding your own inherent biases and how they influence your work is a very important part of training and practice. Patient side here. I had been seeing a therapist for a few months to help with chronic depression and self-harm with some pretty intense suicidal ideation. I had tried Suprax in the past, didn't like the side effects and put it down. But I was ready to try something new to supplement therapy. Everyone within earshot was calling Wellbutrin a miracle and lifesaver, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Since my therapist couldn't prescribe drugs, I got an appointment with a psychiatrist. My first appointment, I explain what I've got going on, what I'm doing to work on it, and what I'm looking for in seeing him. I do a pretty good job holding myself together in public. I dress myself. I hold down jobs. At that point I lived on my own. Now living with my partner. All in all, I've got a well-polished mask. I guess it's too good, because pretty early in our session he looked at me and said, "I don't think you're depressed, bro. This is the first time we met. I've been here for 20 minutes, and you're ready to reverse my diagnosis? Cool, bro." Not a therapist but in healthcare. 2 things. A. This post is stupid. No therapist is going to divulge their patient's secrets. That's not how it works. Even suggesting this may make people have second thoughts of getting needed therapy. B. No matter how messed up you think your life is, most therapists I guarantee have seen worse and won't even bat an eye at your trouble, and will devote much of their heart and time into treating you and your mental health. I've worked with many therapists, psychiatrists, and psych-APRNs. They are 100% all great people who have a special kind of personality and heart towards their patients. Once had a patient whose wife shook their baby to death. He wanted help reconnecting with his wife. At the time I was a young father of a newborn myself, and he triggered a lot of fear in me for my own child, a deep loathing of his spouse, and pity, the how pathetic kind, for the patient. I tried for 3 sessions, met his spouse and everything before handing the case over to my supervisor, who knew about my initial reactions, and tried to help me through it. Unfortunately, it ended up being more about my feelings than his, and I was new to the profession at the time. These things are expected to crop up from time to time, but I was still taken aback by my own reactions. Too many goddamn responsible professionals. I came here to read the salacious stories of how some docs went ham on patients and lost their certifications. Instead, all I've gained is even more respect than I already had for the backbreaking and sometimes thankless hard work these individuals do every day. Work I could never do, not with any consistency anyway. Responsible jerks. I do acute pediatric inpatient behavioral therapy. Has never happened with a child, and never will. Parents on the other hand can be real pieces of and the way they abuse their children, then throw them off on us and scream fix them. I'm a big burly guy and I've cried many nights over this. Lots of people discussing pedophilia as an example of the toughest stuff to not judge despite our training. I haven't yet treated a pedophile, thankfully, at least not an identified one. I did run a men's anger management group though, and some of those men had done some terrible things to women. Most of them I found ways to like and admire for their positive aspects. But there were 2 guys in that group I just could never find unconditional positive regard for. One guy basically never spoke in group. He would give one-word answers and occasionally just discuss how unfair the system was to him. I worked really hard to open him up and find things to connect over, but he never opened up to me or the group. He left the group after he strangled his girlfriend and went to jail. She survived thankfully. The other left group early routinely, showed up late, participated minimally and similarly never wanted to open up honestly. He left early one group after we had discussed him staying to the end and threatened me when I told him he wasn't going to get credit for attendance, something the court required. Oddly, I eventually moved into the apartment below him, completely without knowledge, and listened to him scream at his girlfriend and break while I called the cops. I judge these men. They're shy. Maybe they're redeemable, but redemption requires self-exploration and they both refuse to do so. It's worth noting how differently I felt about them than so many others in the group. Men I found ways to help and admire and respect even in spite of their awful behavior in the past.